Whew, you guys are not gonna like this one. Hey you guys, what's up? Today we're gonna be talking about something a little bit rough, a little bit vulnerable. This is gonna take a lot of vulnerability, I think, on my end. And this is gonna be a hard conversation that I think not a lot of people are gonna necessarily enjoy. If you guys haven't seen the last video, part one of this video, make sure to check it out in the card above or in the end screen at the end of the video. That way you kind of get a little bit of context for this. But in the last video, I got a ton of great feedback, a lot of relatability that was shared with a lot of people. Some people who maybe didn't like the content that I shared, some people that did. But I think that ultimately it was a good thing that I was able to put out and kind of just help, I think, just start a conversation about in our community. And I've noticed a lot more conversation going on since then about it. And so today we're going to be talking about the other side of the spectrum, though. Maybe the things that those people who could relate to what I was saying to previously could need to hear in these situations, and myself included. And so this is going to take a vulnerable conversation from myself, and I'm just going to share with you guys a little bit about my experience through a couple of stories. All right, so the other side of the spectrum is something that I touched very briefly on in the previous video, and that's that I need to work on my own growth, and my own growth is so much more evident and important in my success as a wildlife photographer than other people are. And while I'm not denying the things that I shared in that last video, what I am saying is that my own growth and my own need for growth, my own I guess like insecurities are what keep me oftentimes from becoming the best version of a wildlife photographer that I can be. And so I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that today, sharing about one story in particular that really hits home and I think is kind of showing the vulnerable side of myself that I needed to work on before I could become a successful wildlife photographer. So a couple of years back when I was first getting into wildlife photography, I was literally one of those people that, as much as it pains me to say it, was someone who thought I was better than I was, better than everyone else around me. And I've learned so much through the past, I think, 4 years of my journey about humility and about just realizing the honest truth of where I'm at, that has allowed me to grow to become a way better wildlife photographer than I ever could have imagined back in the day. But back previously in my past life, I was one of those people that saw other people and looked down on them and kind of discouraged other people. I wasn't too verbal about it, but one particular scenario I was. There was one time where I was watching a YouTube video, and I remember one of the things I had struggled with a lot in my early days of wildlife photography, because when I first started, I had a 400mm lens. And so if you know wildlife photography, it's pretty hard to get very close up with the 400mm. It's not, impossible. And by no means am I discouraging people who only have a 400mm lens. But what I am saying is it's more difficult. And so something that I always coveted was really nice portrait shots of birds, other species of wildlife, whatever it may be. And I watched this one YouTube video about a guy who was sharing how he gets so close up to birds. And he was sharing about how with birds that are ground feeders, are seed feeders, he will, set up a log, set up a perch, and then kind of scatter the seeds around it, scatter the nuts around it, whatever it may be, and wait for the birds to come there, and then he has a nice, beautiful, clean shot. And back in the day, I was so arrogant, and I remember leaving a comment on this guy's video just like, this is completely cheating, like you're ruining the way wildlife photography is meant to be. It's not meant to be this thing where it's all posed and it's supposed to be this thing out in nature and completely wild and stuff like that. And remember, these were ground feeding birds. This wasn't like he was setting up dead carcasses out for birds of prey or things like that, but something that's considered ethically across the whole birding community. And so all that to say, I just kind of went off on a rant about against this guy, and it pains me when I think back at that moment to see how I could have been someone who discouraged someone in a way because of my own insecurities, because I was jealous of the photography that he was able to capture. Because I was jealous, not because he did a bad job, not because he did something wrong, but because I was jealous. I felt the need to be able to put him down to build myself up. But the sad thing is, I never found fulfillment that way. I never got better that way. Like really, if I'm honest with myself, and that's part of why I shared the video that I did last week, the video about the worst wildlife photography photos of my early days, reacting to those, because it's kind of laughable how far I've come. Like I wouldn't consider myself anywhere close to the best currently, but I consider myself a pretty good wildlife photographer, and I think pretty good for being only 4 years into it. But when I think about my journey and I think about my first 2 years, I really grew so little in my first 2 years of wildlife photography because I was so focused on what everyone else was doing wrong. I didn't look within myself, and I didn't grow myself. And so that's really what I wanted to share with you guys today, was that story. And I hope that you guys can forgive me for that aspect of my life. I've grown so much, and I'm no longer in a place where I feel like I need to put down other people. And I actually feel very remorseful about that situation and other situations maybe that I've been in like that. And so my hope is to encourage everyone else in their journeys to be able to become great wildlife photographers. And so the last thing I kind of wanted to share about that is that this actually point kind of revolves so much beyond just the wildlife community. But I'm going to talk about the wildlife community because that's where I have influence, and I have, I guess, the say-so and the ability to be able to influence the community around here. But I think that what's so important to realize out of this story for me as well is that when I look back at the person I was and look at who I am now and realize that I'm also imperfect now, is that I'm just blessed by the amount of grace that I've received. Blessed because my past ways do not determine my future actions. And also blessed because I understand and now I realize that people can change and people can have perspectives and people can be good people with bad results and because of insecurities become bad people. And I think that as a culture right now, we talk so much about you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong, and it's two sides against each other, whether that's politics, whether that's social issues, whether that's justice. And so often we forget that the other side of the spectrum has a story, and they have something to be at least listened to and to be heard. And a lot of times we want to cancel that. We want to cancel them out. We don't want to hear about this. We don't want to hear what their perspective is because it challenges our perspective. And because I don't like it, it makes me feel insecure. It makes me feel put down. And there's a way to do it very healthily, very nice. And by no means am I encouraging the behavior that I ran away from in the past. That's not what I'm encouraging. But what I'm saying is it gives me hope to know that my past self is not the version of myself that I am right now. And that people can change. So when I see someone now, my goal, when I see someone who critiques me, who leaves bad comments on my YouTube videos, leaves bad comments on my Instagram, whatever it may be, my goal is no longer to be hateful back towards them, but my goal is to be encouraging towards them and help them understand maybe my purpose for that and why and how they could grow themselves even. And I think that that's one thing that the church does so beautifully. If some of you guys know already, but I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ, and I think one of the beautiful things about the church is that the church is a place where broken people come together and love on each other and show grace towards each other with still challenging each other and still challenging each other to grow. And a non-healthy church doesn't do this. So we all know bad stories about churches that have maybe failed to show the love of Jesus in their ministry, or maybe have been overly judgmental. And I'm not talking about that, but what I am talking about is there is truth and there is reason for things that the way they are, and there's truth behind statements, and there's needs for growth. Like, we can't just sit static in who we are because we are not perfect within and of ourselves. We cannot find perfection in and of ourselves. I was not a perfect person. I had to change to become a more perfect person. I am still so far from that person. But I think in church, I'm able to find a place where people challenge me, challenge my growth, my need for growth, and I'm able to be shown grace in that process, that I am not determined by my past failures, my past mistakes. I'm not determined because I am a failure now, but I am growing into a better person. I'm shown grace in that process, but I'm also shown honesty. And that's a little bit of what I want to just highlight today, share with you guys today, is that I hope as a wildlife photography community that we can show each other grace. I think grace is a huge key word. And I hope that we can also challenge each other, but challenge each other in healthy ways. I hope and encourage healthy challenging. I think that there's a difference between someone who, has watched one of your videos or looked at one of your photos and immediately throws out a judgment call on it, And there's a difference between that and someone who's followed you maybe for 2-3 years, or been your friend even more so for a year or two, and communicated with you and says, hey dude, I think you could work on this. Like, I think this would help you, because they genuinely care for you and they're not in competition with you. So I hope in wildlife photography that we're able to do that. And I think that is one of the reasons. I think that is probably the biggest reason why I'm not a successful wildlife photographer. So I know this was a little bit of a long conversation today, but I hope that you guys got something out of it. I hope this encourages you guys in your wildlife photography journey yourselves. And I'm just so honored, so thankful for you guys who are following me. If you aren't following me, make sure to hit subscribe below. I'll be posting on more content like this, just talking about wildlife photography, the culture, but also doing vlogs, adventures, stuff that you guys enjoy, can tag along with me with and be inspired with. So make sure to hit subscribe below. Leave a comment below with your thoughts to me. Send me a direct message if you'd like to, through Instagram, through my email, whatever it may be, and I'd love to start a conversation, talk more with you guys about this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.